Hey, and welcome to the Back to the Table Board Gaming Podcast, Episode 3. Today, we will be taking a look at 10 plus 2 popular games that we did not enjoy. We will also be unboxing the topic of playing popular games you don't like. Once again, this is the Back to the Table Board Gaming Podcast, a podcast about the board games already on our shelves. I am Bryce, your host with the most today. The most of what? I don't know, charisma, maybe charm, sex appeal? Maybe the most hot air after we're done with today's list. I don't know, we'll see. 10 plus 2 popular games that we did not enjoy. These are games that are on the Board Game Geek's top 100 list. These are some of the most popular games out there that people have played and loved. We gave them a try, and well, despite their popularity, we just did not enjoy them. Now, admittingly, this is a tad different than most board game lists you see on podcast. Most people are talking about games that do the most of this or the most of that, typically in a positive way. We are taking it in a bit of a different direction, I know, but you know what? Nobody really ever talks about the games they didn't like. And I think that's an important aspect of this hobby when picking games that you want to play and you want to spend time with. And it really ties into the unboxing topic we have today, playing popular games you don't like, how often this is done, why we might do this, and is it worth our time? We'll talk about that at the end of the episode, but first we are going to get into this list. Lists are fun, aren't they? Everybody likes making episodes about lists. Everybody likes listening to episodes about lists. And while we're really not trying to manipulate the algorithm a lot when it comes to our podcast, it does manipulate that algorithm pretty heavy. So that's why we're doing a list today. Should be a lot of fun. Now, it's probably obvious by now that I am flying solo today. Jessica could not be here to record with us, but that's all right. We will truck along best we can without her. However, I'm bringing her back ASAP because Board Gaming Podcast with just one host, I don't know, it feels kind of weird. Do you feel weird? I feel weird. That's all right. Let's feel weird together as we get into this list of 10 plus 2 popular games that we did not enjoy. Coming right up. All right, so here's how lists work on the Back to the Table podcast. 10 plus 2. Why plus 2? Well, for one, alliteration is cool, but more importantly, why discuss just 10 games when we can talk about 12 instead? Now, normally on one of our lists, the first 10 games are not in any specific personal order. Today, we're just going to discuss the games as they appear on the Board Game Geek Top 100 list, starting with the lowest ranking and working our way on up to the highest. The exception being that plus 2, these will be games that personify said list the absolute most for us. So if we did have to put these games in any kind of order, this one would be number 1. Now, since Jessica is not here, I will still give you my number 1 game, but we're going to use that 11th game discussed today as kind of a caveat. Also, just for fun today, some of these games we never want to sit down with again, but a few of them we could if the circumstances were right. We'll talk about which ones those are as well. So here we go, without further ado, 10 plus 2 popular games we did not enjoy. Our first stop today on the Board Game Geek Top 100 Games list takes us to spot number 92 with The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9. So essentially in The Crew, everyone takes on the role of an astronaut, and you guys are going to be working together through a series of missions, completing tricks based upon the requirements of said mission in order to advance towards the end of the game. That's essentially it. You have to work together to make sure that player 3 wins certain tricks of a certain type, or that player 4 wins tricks only with these 3 numbers involved, things like that. Now, if you like trick-taking games, this game definitely has something for you. It's been very, very popular with people who enjoy trick-takers, for people who enjoy the space theme, for people who enjoy co-ops. It's got something for you. And whatever that something is, I must have missed it because this one was just not a lot of fun for me. Won't speak too much for Jessica today, seeing as she's not here, but this one was a dud. Now, to be fair to the crew, I just don't like trick-taking games. And to be fair to trick-taking games, I don't like them because I don't understand them. I cannot tell you how many times somebody has shown me a trick-taking game, whether it be euchre or hearts or spades, or in this case, the crew, and it just goes over my head. I don't know what it is. I have like some sort of mental block that prevents me from understanding when to play what card, how to win tricks, when to not take tricks. I'm not really too sure what's going on there with me, but for whatever reason, trick-taking games and me don't get along. I usually avoid them. I also just find the space theme to be kind of whatever when it comes to board games. Not a really big fan of space themes in my games. But more importantly, if I had to critique the game in any kind of real constructive way, I found it to be really, really repetitive. Every mission, you're just trying to play cards in a specific way, and in the next mission, you're doing the same thing, and so on and so forth. Now, to be fair, if you like trick-taking games, you're probably going to enjoy the increasing challenge. For me, the challenge starts right when you open up the box, and so for those reasons, I don't see myself ever playing this again, if for no other reason than my lack of understanding of trick-taking would screw over the rest of my team, and we would lose pretty badly, pretty quickly, so no thanks. Popular game for most people, not for me. That's the crew. Call us the Jeffersons because we are moving on up to spot number 77 with the game formerly known as the Quacks of Quedlinburg. These days, they just call it Quacks. This is a push-your-luck bag building game in which players are going to be drawing chips out of their own personal bags and adding them to their personal pots or player boards. Each chip is going to have a certain value on it, and depending on the value will depend on how deep in the pot it goes. The deeper in the pot it goes, the more points and money and things like that you're going to get. But you have to be careful, though, because there's also things in that bag that could cause your pot to blow up and you bust. That's where the push your luck aspect comes into it. Now, like the crew, this game has gotten very, very popular. In fact, I think it's now in Target, so that goes to show you how wide of a reach it has gained since hitting the board game scene like 6-7 years ago, something like that. It's a dud for me, though, and I will explain why. Let's start with the theme. Here again, for me, this one is just whatever. You play a quack doctor somewhere in the medieval era in Europe. I like medieval history, not too big a fan of the medieval theme in board gaming. Don't know why, it doesn't do much for me. And on top of that, I don't like bag building games. Don't know what it is about building up a bag. It's just an absolute turnoff for me. I can't explain it. Now, that's a me problem. I get it, but still, it just makes me not want to sit there and learn the game at all. Can't tell you why, but it is what it is. As far as an actual critique of the game goes, the push your luck aspect can be very, very fun. However, if your luck runs out, if you have a few bad rounds, it's really, really hard to catch back up. One of those situations where you're probably out of it halfway through, you know you're out of it, but you got to finish the game. And as the game progresses, the choices of what to do, what to build, how to spend those resources to get just the right amount of points over the next guy become very, very long, thinky turns. And so you're just kind of sitting there going, I busted out 5 minutes ago. Everybody else is still, trying to figure out what they want to do on their turn. This is boring. This is not enjoyable. And that was kind of my takeaway of the game. It is a popular game out there that most people like. I do not. That is Quacks. Game number 3 on today's list of popular games that we did not enjoy sits at spot number 73. This is the game Power Grid. Now, this game has enjoyed a lot of popularity for a very long time, 22 years and running as of this recording. So in Power Grid, players are acquiring power plants in order to supply cities with energy. The power plants themselves are purchased through a bidding process at the start of every round, and then each of those plants are going to require a certain number of specific resources that players will be able to purchase as well. The resources sit on an economy track of sorts. Sometimes they'll be worth more, sometimes they'll be worth less. So the trick is knowing when to buy and knowing when to hold off. So we'll start with a personal preference. Auction and bidding games just are not my thing. Jessica enjoys them even less. There's something about needing something and not being able to afford it, or needing something and being outbid for it, or needing something and having the price driven up on you. It's just not a fun feeling. It's a tension that neither of us find very enjoyable. and that tension is really what makes this game go. But even if we did enjoy that kind of tension, you're not feeling it in this game with just 2 players. This game requires all 4 players to be playing in order to make that tension really shine. Now, I know Power Grid has versions out there that are a little better for a 2-player count, but that brings us to the last real big problem, and that is we just didn't find the process of this game very enjoyable. For me, a lot of that has to do with the theme. The whole idea of buying power plants just to power up cities doesn't really do it for me, but the gameplay itself is very repetitive and boring, we found. Not very fun, not very exciting, especially without that tension. But if the tension was there, now you're talking about a whole different level of frustration where it's like, I want that power plant, didn't get it, son of a bitch. Now all my resources are useless. Now I didn't power up enough cities. Now I don't have enough money. Now I'm that much more behind in the next round when the power plants get more expensive. That's the thing with this game. If you have a bad start, it's really hard to come back because as you bid through the power plants, they get more expensive and more powerful. It definitely could just be that we suck at auction and bidding games and we don't know how to play them right. Okay, fair enough, but still, not an enjoyable experience, not an enjoyable game. Not to mention, this game is ugly as hell. It's one of the ugliest game boxes I have ever seen. It's one of the ugliest maps I've ever seen. The components, weird colored, odd, ugly, not a fan of any of it. I know this designer has an obsession with making all of his games just the nastiest green color he can find. This one takes the cake. It is the ugliest green ever, in my opinion. And so with all that, it is safe to say that neither Jessica or myself are interested in ever playing this one ever again. We appreciate its popularity, we appreciate its long-standing run on the Board Game Geek Top 100, but we don't appreciate the game at our table. That is Power Grid. Fourth popular game today that we did not enjoy sits at number 57 on the Board Game Geek Top 100, and that is the game Harmonies. Harmonies is a tile drafting game in which players are competing to create beautiful landscapes according to their specific scorecards. Every turn, they're going to draft a tile, and each of these tiles is going to represent something like a mountain or a tree or a river, and they're going to place it in their board according to their scorecards. And every time they score the configuration that the scorecard is asking for, they can take a score cube and put it on that specific set of tiles. The trick here is that every tile you draft also comes with a cube that represents something naturey as well, and those cubes need to be placed in certain positions too. And so the tile you need doesn't always necessarily come with the cube you want and vice versa. So you spend the game making the negotiation of what tile do I need, how can I make that cube work, and you just want to have the most points at the end of the game. This game kind of sprang up out of nowhere 2 years ago when it was released. It's all over shelves at Target. I think you can find it at Walmart too, and so it's been able to have a very wide reach. And it's a very straightforward, lightweight game that is perfect for non-gamers, for families. I can see where the popular appeal is for this game. However, for us, it was a miss. But unlike the other games in this list, it wasn't a miss because we found something unenjoyable about it. It was a miss for us simply because we already have a lot of games like this that scratch this particular itch. Jessica and myself both like tile drawing games. We have games like Calico and Cascadia that do essentially the same thing. And so while there was nothing wrong with Harmonies, it plays well, it plays quick, there's a lot of good choices to it, it's a very beautiful looking game. When we were playing this, I specifically found myself going, man, this just makes me want to play Calico, or man, this just makes me want to play Cascadia. If I had to critique the gameplay at all, I would say you can find yourself in a position where the tiles available are nothing you can use. You don't really need them. They're just going to clog up space and maybe even take away points from you. But outside of that, the game's fine. It just wasn't for us because, again, we have things we like already about it. So not much more to say. It's a hit for most people, but we have this particular itch scratched already. That is Harmonies. Sitting at number 47 on the Board Game Geek Top 100 list is the ever-popular racing game Heat: Pedal to the Metal. Now, while racing is a big component to this game, Heat Pedal to the Metal is actually, in my opinion, more of a hand management game. Every turn, you decide how many cards you want to draw from your deck. It could be as few as one or as many as four. These cards are going to do an array of things, but for the most part, they're going to be suited numbers 1 through 4. And those cards you're going to put together, combine them, and move that many spaces down the track. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 7. It all depends on what you draw. Now, the biggest problem I have with Heat is the fact that it doesn't feel like a racing game. Yes, you are racing, but what you're really focusing on is how you manage and play your hand. And to me, if I'm playing a racing game, managing my hand is not as exciting as racing down the track. But the forefront of my focus is that hand and not the race. They attempted to utilize some racing thematics by having your gear shifter be the thing that determines the number of cards you draw. So if you shift up, you're going to go faster. If you shift up in the game, you draw more cards. I get it. But again, it's still more about the hand management than the racing. We own a game called Rallyman GT, and in my opinion, this game captures that edge-of-your-seat, high-octane thrill of racing way better than Heat ever could. Instead of using a gear shifter to determine the number of cards you get, in Rallyman, you use a series of dice to determine how far down the track you're going to move. And that to me is way more exciting than playing around with a bunch of cards in the game Heat. Now, with all that said, I would still play Heat again. If somebody else had it, they wanted to play it, I would sit down, I would have a decent enough time with it. However, the entire time, I would just be thinking about Rallyman. That is Heat Pedal to the Metal. Getting us to the halfway point now of today's list, popular games that we did not enjoy. Sitting at number 34 on the BGG Top 100, we have the game Root. Root is essentially a war game in which a bunch of woodland critters are duking it out for supremacy within the forest that they live. Every player is going to take on the role of one of these faction of critters and asymmetrically work their way towards victory. Every group of critters plays differently, and it's a pretty straightforward game in that regard. There's not much to it when you're explaining it. The real strategy, the real depth in Root comes from these asymmetric factions playing against each other and sometimes to the benefit of one another. And there's this really delicate balance of helping this guy out now just to screw him over later, or no, I'm out for self right now, but I can't do it unless I rely on this guy over here. So really, it's all about how you're playing off the other players while still maintaining your overall strategy to take victory. This is a game that requires a lot of time in order to properly learn it, because not only do you have to learn the faction you're about to play with, you have to learn what all the other factions do. Because if you don't, you're not going to know how to best work with them or best take advantage of them when they do certain things throughout the course of the game. And to invest that much time into learning something, I just don't have that type of time or patience as a gamer. Neither does Jessica. Furthermore, when I think about the fact that Jessica and I play games, typically just her and I most of the time, it doesn't seem that we would get a lot out of Root in a two-player scenario. I could be wrong. There are probably a lot of people out there who make it work with two players really well. I just don't see it. On top of that, there's also the theme. The theme is just not doing it for me. I like woodland. I like the fall aesthetic that the game has going on, but the anthropomorphic animals, I can't stand. Anthropomorphology freaks me out something fierce. It's just a little too close to that weird furry thing, and it's just, I don't want anything to do with it, and Root has a lot of that going on. And so when you put all that together, Root for us just did not work. It doesn't seem to fire on all four cylinders with two players, but even if we were able to get past that, the anthropomorphic animals make it very, very unappealing. But even if we were able to get past that, because we do have some games where, we tolerate it. Even if we got past that, just the time it takes to learn a game that we didn't have much interest in anyway, no, it's a pass. Would not play Root again, but I can appreciate why other people enjoy it. Seventh game on today's list of popular games we did not enjoy sits at spot number 19. So we're now getting into the top 20 of the most popular board games on Board Game Geek, and that is Great Western Trail. In Great Western Trail, you and your friends compete as cattle ranchers looking to make the most money off of your cattle as possible as you drive them from the plains of Texas up to the rail yards of Kansas City. At its core, this game is a worker placement Euro. There are several spots along the Great Western Trail you're going to be able to land on, and they do a various array of things, give you a various array of benefits, but you also have some dangers you got to watch out for as well. You'll have opportunities to hire crew members. You're going to have opportunities to buy bigger and better cattle. You're going to have opportunities to make money. You have to watch out for people stealing your cattle. There are buildings that will just do all sorts of stuff that will hopefully gain you a bunch of profit by the time you get to Kansas City. Get yourself a big payout, and then you do it all over again. So the trick is, land on this space in round 1 so I can take advantage of this space in round 2 so I can set myself up real big for round 3 and 4. That's kind of the strategy of the game. And if you like worker placement Euros, this one is probably definitely for you. I like worker placement Euros, but let me tell you why I did not like this one. Now, one of the biggest reasons I did not care for Great Western Trail is that it's just a hard game to learn how to play. Heavy games are not typically my favorite. I do enjoy some. This one, it just wasn't working for me. If you don't land your guy on the right spots at the right time, you are going to have a very disjointed game. I understand that's part of the learning process, but it was just so frustrating knowing that, oh, I missed my opportunity for that. Now I don't have money. Now I can't go over here. Now I can't go over there. I didn't sell enough cattle, and we have to do this how many more times? It just became a very aggravating, frustrating slog of a game where everyone else is doing better, and I'm just really struggling to just get to the end of every round. So that was not very enjoyable. Beyond that, though, just the theme wasn't grabbing me, which I was really surprised about because I love Old West history. I love the Old West. Hell, I live in what was once the Old West. Everything about that should work, but it doesn't. I think it's because the game just feels more worker placement than it does cattle driving. And it feels more worker placement because I'm always going, man, I need to do 4 things, but I only have the option to do 3. That's that heaviness coming back into it. So there's not much more I can say. I just thought the game was too heavy and therefore too unenjoyable. Every gamer's got their threshold when it comes to the weight of a game and how difficult it is to learn and to get right. If you do okay the first couple of rounds or maybe the first game, you kind of got your ass handed to you, but you kind of figured it out at the same time and now you want to try again. That didn't happen here. I got my ass handed to me. I didn't know what I was doing, and it just ended up being a really not enjoyable experience, and that is why I won't be returning to this one. That is Great Western Trail. 8th game on today's list of popular games we did not enjoy currently sits at spot number 15, and that is The Castles of Burgundy. This game takes players back to medieval France in the region of Burgundy, and what they're going to be doing throughout the course of the game is building upon their land with different castles and trade routes and silver mines, all to accumulate the most points by the end of the game. What players are actually doing is rolling dice every turn and then using those dice to draft tiles from the main board or put them from their staging area onto their play area. They can also hire workers, which will help manipulate die rolls later, and then they can also pick up and deliver goods. The dice here are the driving factor because depending on what you roll will depend on what you can take and where you can put it. The name of the game is to use these tiles to create awesome combos for you so that every turn you're not just rolling dice and doing a couple of things. You're taking advantage of the tiles that you've already placed to create these epic combos because when you put this tile next to that tile, something awesome happens. So given that it's sitting where it is on the Board Game Geek Top 100, most people love this game. They love the puzzle aspect of it. How do I make these dice work for me in the best way possible? However, for me, it just didn't do it. And everything I'm about to say comes with a giant caveat that I want to throw out there right now. It is possible that if I came back to this one now, I would enjoy it a lot more than when I first sat down to play it way back when I was still getting to know board gaming, when I was still coming up into the hobby and discovering exactly what it is I like. But my experience being what it was, for me, this game was just incredibly boring. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I had just played Catan and found that game to be incredibly awful. And so when I came to Castles of Burgundy, I saw the tiles, I saw the dice, I saw the resources, the same type of artwork, and was just like, oh no, here we go again. Which is unfair because Castles of Burgundy is its own game, but even so, when playing it, I just found it to be boring. Rolling the dice, trying to figure out that puzzle, it just was not engaging to me. I didn't feel engaged in the game. I was just kind of like, well, I rolled a 6. There are the things I can do with 6, so I guess I'm going to do those things. In a way, it felt like the game kind of played itself. Now, I know that you can use workers to mitigate your dice and get the die faces you want, which is all fine and good, but I found myself going, well, I'm spending a good amount of time taking my turn to draft workers just to make sure I can get things I want. I'd rather just get the things I want. Now, the next thing is probably just me, but I'm always very distrusting of a game where everybody loves it, right? Where everybody is saying, this is the greatest game. I always am like, is it though? Or are you just saying that because everybody else is saying it? Same goes with games created by specific designers, this game being one of those games. So I kind of walked into the game with that in mind too, like, okay, it can't be that great. And just because this guy's name's on the box doesn't mean it's going to be awesome. And maybe that colored my perspective a little. Like I said, if I return to this now, I might like it because you know what? That ugly artwork that everyone else complains about in a game like Castles of Burgundy, I actually enjoy it. I have a lot of games that have horrendous artwork that I find bring it some sort of rustic charm. I actually like games about farming and tile drafting and building out your little territory. So maybe Castles of Burgundy was just wrong time, wrong place for me as a board gamer. Be that as it may, my memory of it is it was boring and I'm not jumping on this bandwagon. Take that for what you will, but that's why Castles of Burgundy is on today's list. Game number 9 today is actually 2 games sitting at spots number 12 and 4, respectively, on the Board Game Geek Top 100, and that is Gloomhaven and Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. Quite arguably the most popular and successful dungeon crawling campaign game out there, at least in the last 10 years. Gloomhaven as a franchise is an absolute juggernaut in the board gaming world. So players enter the world of Gloomhaven as one of a few different characters that come with the game, and these characters are going to have different abilities and skills that they're going to be building upon as the game progresses. And in this game, you're going to be moving your character through the town of Gloomhaven, uncovering mysteries and opening up treasure chests and solving puzzles, but mostly what you're going to be doing is fighting monsters. And you fight these monsters using a deck of cards specific to your character that you will be building upon and adding to throughout the course of the campaign. These cards are split into 2 with a top section and a bottom section, and when you play it, you only get to use one. So the challenge in the game in any given round is mitigating which one of these actions you want to use and which one you're willing to toss aside, because once you use the card, you don't get it back until the level is over. So, like I said, this is a very popular game. I have not heard anybody in the board game content creation space or anybody out there in the real world of board gaming say anything negative about this game short of that it weighs 20 pounds. The box is very, very heavy. But outside of that, man, people sing praises for this thing. I'm willing to bet you haven't heard too many people say they didn't like it either. Let's change that right now. So right off the bat, the fantasy medieval era thing that Gloomhaven has going on for it, I don't really like that theme. You've heard me say it about a different game in today's episode. The medieval fantasy thing, not a fan. Now, that's just surface level stuff. I have much bigger problems with Gloomhaven that go to a much deeper level. And I think for me, the biggest one, more than anything else, is that when you break it down, this game is just one of those arcade beat 'em ups from back in the day. Do you remember those games like The Simpsons or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or X-Men? At the arcade, you go in and your guy walks through a level just beating up bad guys until he gets to a boss. Then he beats him up. Then he goes to the next level and just does it again. That's what this game is for me, except instead of at an arcade, it's on the table. The disadvantage to it being on the table is that unlike an arcade where you walk in and just hit the start button and bam, you're ready to go, you have to set up every level. You have to lay out all the tiles. You have to put all the bad guys in their place. You have to make sure every item is where it's supposed to be, and then you can play the game. No, thank you, man. If I want the beat 'em up experience from a video game, I will just go turn on my Switch, turn on the Sega emulator, and bam, I have all the beat 'em ups I could possibly want. The setup and teardown for what the game is, for me anyway, just not worth it. It's just a beat 'em up. That's all it is. It's a beat 'em up on your table that takes forever to set up and tear down. But let's just say we've entered a magical world where I don't have to set it up. All I have to do is sit down. It's already set up for me at a table. Just sit down, grab your character, grab your cards, and play. Unfortunately, that's still not going to cut it. The card combat system here is extraordinarily frustrating. Every time I was moving through a scenario when playing this game, I found myself looking at a card going, I need both the top and bottom action, but I'm only going to be able to choose one. After that, it's not like I put it in the discard pile and cycle through it again. No, that card is gone and it's not coming back until the next campaign. That sucks. That's incredibly frustrating, especially if you work so hard to get this new card, and now you have to make this choice. I know a lot of people find those type of decisions fun. When I'm trying to immerse myself into this super thematic campaign dungeon crawling game where I'm taking on the role of this character and I'm fighting monsters, and the game really wants you to feel like you're doing that, it kind of takes you out of it when you go, I want to run and attack. Wait, I can only run or attack. That rips you out of it entirely, or at least it does for me. This one is an absolute dud and was an absolute dud for me when I sat down to play it. Now, to be fair to the game and to give it credit, I think what appeals to people the most about this is the experience they're having with the people they play it with. You start the game out, you have your character, you want those characters to grow, so odds are you're not playing with different people as this campaign goes on. You and a couple of different friends are going through this thing together. And you know what? That is the sign of a good board game. If it creates those moments for you with your friends and loved ones, it's done its job. In that sense, I think Gloomhaven works because it has done that for so many people. It didn't do it for me and Jessica because we just don't like this kind of game. We have those experiences with other games that take far less time to set up and don't remind us of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video game at your local Chuck E. Cheese or wherever they still have arcade games these days. I don't know. I'm kind of showing my age a bit here, but whatever. I'm glad Gloomhaven has worked for so many people. I really, really am. It just did not work for us. All right, here we are, game number 10, the final game on today's list of popular games we did not enjoy before we get into the bonus +2 games. And technically, we're kind of cheating here a little bit because the game we're here to talk about doesn't actually show up in the top 100 on Board Game Geek. However, games that have come after it do show up on the list, and its universe as a whole is really well represented on the Board Game Geek top 100. That game in question is Pandemic, with the highest ranking version being Pandemic Legacy Season 1, sitting currently at the number 3 spot in that top 100. Now, you might be thinking it's a little unfair to judge a game we've never played before, that being Pandemic Legacy Season 1, based off of our thoughts on one of its predecessors. And you might be right, but that's also kind of my point. Both me and Jessica disliked Pandemic so much when we played it that we decided we were never going to take a look at anything Pandemic came out with from that point forward. And we have stuck to our guns on that one for years at this point. However, we are definitely in the minority because the popularity of Pandemic only seems to be growing. So, a version of it is going to be on the top 100 list for a long time, I predict. Anyway, if you don't know, in Pandemic, you and your friends are teaming up to try to eradicate deadly viruses that have sprung up all over the world. In typical co op fashion, each of you plays a character with some sort of asymmetric ability or special condition that comes with that particular character, and you guys are going to work together, moving around the globe, trying to research the viruses so that you can learn about them enough to destroy them. Sometimes you can't destroy them, you have to work together to isolate them, and these different player powers are going to come in handy throughout the course of the game. Like most co ops, you get a turn and then the game takes a turn, typically undoing everything you just worked to do towards victory. Now, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but this system of co op play was actually developed here in the first Pandemic, the game we're talking about, where you guys are teaming up and everyone's got their own special ability, then you take a turn, then the game takes a turn. I think Pandemic was the first modern board game to do that. So, obviously, credit where credit is due. However, still with that said, did not work for us. And it really comes down to three major things. And we'll start with the most ancillary first, and that is the theme. As you can probably tell by now, me and Jessica both enjoy a good theme in a board game. And this one we just did not find good. It has nothing to do with the real life pandemic that just happened 6 years ago. Things like that don't bother us. We don't get icky feelings from things that are too real or historical events in games. That stuff doesn't bother us. It's just in it of itself, this idea of running around the world fighting viruses just was not very exciting for us. This is not helped by the fact that the game board itself is just a very bland looking map, and the viruses are represented by these colorful little cubes that are translucent, something kind of like out of It's a Wonderful World, if you've ever played that. Just doesn't seem very thematically sound, doesn't tie the theme together at all. It's just moving pawns around on a bland map, trying to push colorful cubes off the board, and then they come back on the board. Not thematic in the slightest for either of us. Now, the second aspect for why we found this game unenjoyable is probably the biggest aspect out of the three, and that is neither of us ever felt like we were actually playing the game, but rather the game was kind of playing itself. Back in the day when we were giving this game a shot, we never found any particular turn where we were actually in control of what we wanted to do. The choice of what to do with our character on any given turn always seems so obvious, where it's like, yeah, you have to do this or else the virus gets out of control. It's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to do that. I want to go over here. I want to check something out over there, but I don't really get to because I have to do this. Now, I'm sure this is just a symptom of co-op games generally. Once in a while, you're going to have a turn where the most obvious thing is the most obvious thing, and you just got to do it and wait till your next turn where you can be a little more open-ended. Here, it felt like that was always the case. There was never a moment to do anything other than what the most obvious thing was to do. And if you're not playing the game is playing itself, and then you sit there along for the ride for 90 minutes or whatever, only to then lose, you're like, well, that was a big waste of time. What the hell did we just do? And if you win, you don't really feel like you won. You felt that the game just kind of carried you to that victory. So with all that said, it just didn't create a very enjoyable gaming experience for us. Which kind of rolls off into the final thing. When we were playing Pandemic, feeling like the game was kind of playing itself, we were just like, God, there's so many other co-ops we have where we are not just along for the ride, where we can take chances, where we can explore options, where we can see if something will pay off, and if it doesn't, we can adjust, where the most obvious answer is not always right in front of you. That's what you want in a good co-op game, because co-op can lead to a lot of problems already, right? The game can be too hard, or one person takes the lead and starts telling everybody what to do. So a good co-op game has to find a nice balance of kind of moving the game along, but also giving you room to explore so that you can feel like you actually did take on the game and win. Neither of us felt like we were taking on the game Pandemic. In fact, it felt like Pandemic was taking us for a ride across a very ugly board, immersed into a theme that just did not do it for us. overall just a very boring, frustrating experience. And that is why we have never returned to Pandemic. Don't care how popular it is with most. Go ahead, enjoy it. We will be playing a different co-op that gives us a lot more sense of adventure, choice, and awesomeness. All right, we are done with the first 10 very popular games in the Board Game Geek Top 100 that we ourselves did not enjoy. Maybe you're rolling your eyes at us right now. Maybe you're asking yourself, what the hell is the matter with these people? But then again, maybe not. If you are, though, maybe you need a breather. Let's take one right now. Let's catch our breaths. Let's breathe and calm down, right? We have 2 more popular games we're going to talk about today that we did not care for, and we'll break down what those games are and why just on the other side of this. Well, man, oh man, am I glad we took a little bit of a breather for a couple of reasons. 1, I needed it, and that was a lot of games we discussed. But 2, look who I found.
It's me.
Hey.
Jessica, in case you didn't recognize my voice.
Yes, that's right. It's Jessica. I found her. She was not doing the podcast, but now she's here to help us close it out.
Literally dragged in by the cat.
Yes, the cat did drag her in. We have 2 cats, actually, and they dragged her in here. How you doing, babe?
Pretty good. Happy to be here.
Don't ever make me do this again by myself. This is going to be much better now that you're here.
I promise I won't. Okay, so catch me up. This episode is popular games that you didn't like.
Well, we didn't like. I spoke for you a little bit.
Oh.
Well, because you didn't like some of them, too.
That's
You
true.
were supposed to be here.
I do have a lot of opinions about things I don't like, so that's valid. Okay, so where are we at now?
So we've done 10. We are now at the +2. And so the first game we're going to talk about, the number 11 spot, is going to be a caveat game. And the caveat here is it was a game I only thought I didn't like. I actually really do enjoy it.
Oh, a bit of a contrast there.
Yes. We got to break it up a little. We talked about all these games we don't like. You might as well throw one in that you do. And that game is Terraforming Mars. This is kind of a big game, so I'm going to keep it kind of short and sweet. That, and it's been so long since I played it, I don't really remember the ins and outs, but essentially everybody is working from the same board. Not really working together to terraform Mars, but doing things on the planet Mars to help lead it towards being properly terraformed. Everything you do kind of builds up oxygen and water and atmosphere, or maybe temperature. This is kind of a super strategic, not really area control, but kind of engine building game in which you're going to be extracting resources from Mars to give you things that help you build things to put on the planet that do other things for you, like something like that.
Okay, so lots of things involved.
Lots of things are moving around. I remember that there are a bunch of cards out there that represent different buildings of different types, and then you use those resources to buy those buildings. You put the buildings out on the planet, and then they give you other things. I also remember that your opponents are able to get things from your buildings and structures as well. So you have to be really careful about how you set things out and when you do, and then also look out for what things you can take advantage of that your opponents lay down. There are also corporate goal cards that are put out there because you represent a corporation or you work for a series of corporations, and they have these goals out there that if you can complete them, you're going to get those, and I think it's bonus points or a bonus ability. It's been a while since I've played, but essentially that is how you play the game.
Okay, and tell me why you didn't like this one at first.
Mostly because it was just so insanely hard. I read the rules, I was intrigued by it. I went on to Board Game Arena because there was no way I was going to buy this game, given how much it cost at the time, and it might not have been a game that I would enjoy and that we would enjoy together. And I think playing it on Board Game Arena was really what ruined it for me, because I thought I had the rules down and I just got my ass handed to me. Maybe I should have played with people who were more beginning level, but I did so bad. Not only was my score terrible, because it's one of those games where people are kind of interacting with each other on the board based on what you put down and what they put down, I think I did so terrible, I messed up everyone else's game too. And so the game felt extraordinarily overwhelming. You know those times when you sit down and play a game and you're like, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, I just don't know why I'm doing it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was Terraforming Mars, and it was so frustrating that I was like, man, this, I hate this game. But as it turns out, after a day or two of thinking it over, I realized I'm wrong. I actually like this game. I really like the way the strategies play out, where you have to build things, get the resources, watch what your opponents are doing, check the water levels and the oxygen levels, because maybe you don't want them to go up too high because you still have something to build. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized you and I would really enjoy a game like this together.
Yeah, that does actually sound like the kind of game that we like to play. Not, on a work night, but on the weekend when we have a little bit more time to dive deeper into something, that sounds like something we would enjoy.
Thankfully, the price for this game used is coming down because they're releasing a re-implementation or a sequel or some sort of legacy version of it. So I looked at the Geek Market, which is a great place to go, by the way, for used games. Check out the Board Game Geek Market if you haven't. But yeah, the price is coming down because of this new version coming out. So I still don't know if I want to buy a copy just yet, but if we can get it played at a board game cafe somewhere, I think you and I would really enjoy it. We might stumble through it the first couple of times, but this was definitely a game I thought I hated. But as it turns out, I think we would get a lot of enjoyment out of it. That is Terraforming Mars, the 11th game on today's list, and the caveat.
So that was your caveat game,
Yep.
which I haven't played. But the next game, which is the one I think you said encapsulates the list the most for you.
Yes, the game that was the most popular that I disliked the most as well.
Yeah, so that one I have played, I'm familiar with. I don't know if I would have put it as my top choice on this list, but I understand why you did, because you really did not like this one.
Yes, I did not. Or no, I did not. Whichever one is more proper. Yeah, I didn't like it.
Okay, so what game is it?
The game that personifies this list the most of popular games in the Board Game Geek Top 100 that we, or I guess in this case I, did not enjoy is Lost Ruins of Arnak. So, in the Lost Ruins of Arnak, players take on the role of an Indiana Jones-like explorer, and they are going to be traversing a jungle, going deeper and deeper into it, going up mountains and following river pathways, if I'm not mistaken, to get to all these different temples within the jungle. Inside these temples, there are treasures that they want to extract, but also there are monsters that they have to fight. So the treasures that you find in the temple are going to be used to not only fight other monsters, because the monsters require a certain combination of treasures in order to defeat them, but you also have to manipulate the treasures as you get them to get yourself different treasures that you might need to do other things in the game. Some of the other things in the game that you're going to be doing is moving up different tracks. The one that stands out the most that I can remember is the research track, and as you move up that, you're going to get bonus turns and abilities. The bonus turns are important because as a standard turn, I think you only get 2 things that you can do. But as you place your workers and go up and down tracks and take cards and resources, they are going to open up different moves for you. The moves you select are through a deck of cards, so there's a bit of a deck building element going on in here. You're going to win cards and buy cards using these resources and treasures that you find throughout the course of the game to give you more, bigger, better actions to go deeper into the jungle to be able to fight bigger and badder monsters for more and more treasure. Now, it's been a while since we have played this. Jess, am I leaving anything out?
I don't think so.
That kind of sums it up, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one's very popular with most board gamers. This one is extraordinarily popular with most board game podcasters. In fact, it was because of other podcasts that I listened to that we decided to take a crack at it. Almost bought it, decided to try it on Board Game Arena first, and man, am I glad I did, because as it turns out, this one kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say it sucks, but it's very much not what it promises to be.
And that's really where the problems begin, for me at least, in this game. What I just described sounds like a high-octane adventure through the jungle. You're fighting monsters, you're taking treasure, you're researching, you're moving, you're building your deck. This sounds extraordinarily fun. But when you get down to it, really all that happens in this game is that you fiddle around with resources. This is not a resource management game. This is what I like to call a resource fiddling game, where you have a green and a red, but you need a blue. So you have to turn the green and the red into the blue, and then you trade the blue one in to get you a yellow one, and then you get a card. That is not an adventure through the jungle. That is boring.
Yeah, it's a game that it's supposed to be really thematically exciting, and all of the different resources fit generally within the theme of the game, but how they're used is kind of random. Like the idea that you fight a monster by, I guess you're giving him treasure. I don't even understand what that is. Like you turn in resources and now the monster's gone. It's just like trading with the monster to get him to leave you alone. Like, is that the thematic element there? That doesn't even make sense.
Well, furthermore, the things you trade and what you trade and how kind of takes you out of the thematic element as well, because the green ones are, I think, arrowheads. And if you turn in a green one plus a red ruby, you're going to get a blue, I don't know what it is, but you're trading in like arrowheads and rubies to get shoes or something like that. It's like, what? Huh?
Yeah, the way the resources kind of turn into other resources doesn't make sense, like thematically and logically. It's just kind of like, this is the conversion formula of this particular game. And it kind of really takes you out of the theme.
There is no theme because, or at least that's what I would say, because when you describe it that way, where it's like, this is just the conversion, those pieces literally could have been anything. It could have been piece 1 plus piece 2 gives you piece 3. And I know that when you break down a board game to its most bare bones, all you really have is a math equation. I understand that. But the math equation has to bring you in somehow to make you forget you're just doing math on the table.
The one thing that really, really did it for me was, and I'm not a big fan in general of like combat as an aspect of games. It's not my favorite mechanic, but when you are fighting a monster or an enemy or anything like that, it's weird to me that the mechanic is exactly the same as collecting resources or literally anything else. It's just stuff. And that's really weird to me. Like, why even have a monster? Why not just be like, it's a puzzle you have to unlock by turning in the right pieces? Or it could be literally anything because it's kind of nothing.
Right, and I think this game would have actually been made infinitely better if you fought the monsters using dice. And I know this is a very, very strong Euro type of game, so Euro players do not like dice. But if a game like Champions of Midgard could incorporate strong Euro themes with dice combat and make it work somehow, I think any game could. Now, it is unfair to expect one game to be like the other, but I think why this one stands out the most is because it was advertised as this big adventure, this big thematic thing. And theme is very, very big for me. I know you like theme as well. Nothing about it felt like an adventure. It just felt like fiddling around with resources to make things happen. That's just not that fun.
Yeah, and I think it was just kind of hard to even like logic it because it didn't make sense. I mean, it makes sense. It's not like it's inconsistent. Like this turn, you're turning a red thing into a blue thing, but next turn, you're turning a blue thing into a red thing. Like, I mean, it's consistent in what becomes what. It just doesn't, I don't know. For some reason, it made it hard to kind of strategize because it was just like, why? Why am I doing that? That doesn't really make sense.
Let's talk about how those turns work for a second, too, because this was kind of the next thing that really bothered me. You have to trade things in and move things up tracks and play cards in order to get more turns. Otherwise, you're stuck doing like 1 or 2 actions and then your turn's over. And figuring out that puzzle, I guess you do get better the more you play, but it was not a fun puzzle to figure out because it was like, well, I want to go deep into the jungle. Well, you need boots to do that. Well, you need more boot cards in your deck. In order to get that, you got to get these resources. Maybe it's because we didn't know how to play, but everything felt way too tight and constrictive. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Like it was just not, I mean, I don't want to say it wasn't possible to do what you needed to do. Obviously, it is. Lots of people play this game. They're successful at doing it. It just felt like there were just too many steps to be able to make any progress whatsoever.
It might be popular for literally everybody else on the planet besides me and you. In this studio, however, where we record this podcast, The Lost Ruins of Arnak was a total dud. So much so that out of all the popular games in Board Game Geek's Top 100 list, this is the one, well, at least I, disliked the absolute most.
So that wraps it up. 10 plus 2 popular games that Bryce didn't enjoy. There was a couple of them on the list that I actually liked.
You're wrong. They were terrible.
So, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of this, isn't it?
No, you're wrong. They were terrible.
Everyone can have their own opinion. So what games are popular that you didn't enjoy, or what games did we talk about that you think we're wrong and you did enjoy them? Or what's your list? We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can leave a comment wherever you're listening. We'd love to keep the conversation going.
Coming right up, we are going to unbox the topic of playing popular games you don't enjoy, and we're going to do so from the viewpoints of many different types of people that you find within the hobby. Should be a great conversation.
Hey guys, it's Jessica. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you are, consider giving us a follow and leaving a 5-star rating and review from wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, like and subscribe to not only never miss a show, but also get access to all our exclusive bonus content. And if you find yourself really enthusiastic to help, sharing the show is the best way to do it. We're a small, little show who doesn't use social media, so these little things go a very long way. Thanks a million for all your support. Now, let's get back to the show.
This is Unboxing, a segment of the show where Jessica and I discuss some of the more nuanced aspects and finer details within the hobby of board gaming. There are a lot of cogs and gears that turn within the world of board gaming, and we cover them here by unboxing them. Jessica, keeping within the spirit of the show today, I wanted to talk about playing games you don't like, and not whether or not you should or shouldn't, but I wanted to examine when you might play board games you don't like, under what conditions that might be, appropriate or necessary. And I want to examine this from 3 different viewpoints. One of being from you personally as your own gamer, your own taste in board games, the things you like to play, not you specifically, but just as a gamer. The second being from the vantage point of somebody who is part of a game group, where you are trying to accommodate and maybe even contend with the tastes and wants of others and the games they like versus the games you like. And finally, I want to look at it from the perspective of a content creator, as they're going to see a lot of games they may not necessarily enjoy. And so I think when we add all that together, this creates a much more interesting avenue for a good conversation. So let's unbox playing popular games you don't enjoy. So I think I want to start out by just maybe discussing what makes a game popular to begin with. I think there's a lot of different things at play here, but Jess, what do you think makes a board game popular to start out?
Oh, that's a great question. I think a lot of it has to do with the hype around it. I feel like who's talking about it, which popular board game, channels or podcasts or whatever. I think it has a lot to do with the publisher. There's definitely certain publishers and designers who kind of automatically get popularity just because people tend to, they have other popular games. So they're like, okay, this is by this person. I know I like their other games, or a lot of people like their other games. So it's got to be something that's going to be special.
But then once it hits the table and people start playing it and they enjoy it for real, it does earn its popularity at that point, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would assume so. I don't think that it's just popular just because of where it came from or who's talking about it. I think it definitely has to stand up on its own, once you get it to the table for sure.
Okay, so with all that stuff combined now, I wonder when it comes to the table or when somebody brings that game to the table for the first time, how much do you think all of that stuff plays a role in somebody deciding whether or not the game is going to be good for them? I know it's kind of a hard question to answer because everybody is different, but I guess let me ask it in this way. Do you think there is some kind of synergistic energy out there in the hobby that if everyone else says the game is popular and good, and if it's got that name recognition, when people sit down, might there be a little pressure maybe to be like, yes, I'm destined to like this game, or I'm going to like this game?
I think there's certainly an expectation that you're going to like it, especially if the people who have already vouched for it are people who have similar tastes to you. I also think that if the people that you're sitting down playing with are having a good time, that's definitely going to influence you to have a better time. Like if you're sitting there at the table and the people you're playing with are having a terrible time and they're hating it, it's hard to even know if you really like the game itself because the experience is kind of miserable. So I think the people around you and their reactions definitely has a big impact on how you feel about the game, at least initially.
Right. So then the question becomes, all that in mind, what happens if you don't? It seems like a really basic question, but I guess let me tell you what inspired this whole episode. I was listening to a podcast whose name I will not mention because I don't want to embarrass anyone or throw them under the bus. But this person was talking about the game Ark Nova, which, if you don't know, it's a very popular but very heavy, very long game. A game could take up to 4 hours to play. And this particular podcaster had mentioned that he was waiting to like it still, that he kept playing it and it just wasn't vibing. So he was determined to play it until he liked it. How many times do you think he played it to get to that point?
I don't know, 4 or 5?
More than 20.
Oh my gosh.
Do the math. 4 hours a game times 20 plus plays. That's a lot of time sitting at the table playing something you don't like. So when I ask about that synergistic kind of energy, I wonder if that played a role into him giving that much time of his life, time you don't get back, by the way, playing something that he very clearly did not enjoy, despite what the rest of the board game world around him might have been saying. I wonder how many people sometimes are playing these games because they're in the top 100, because everyone else seems to like them, because certain YouTubers said they were good.
Gosh, that's such an interesting question. And I think it's really interesting that we're looking at it from the different viewpoints, because I feel like the answer is going to be different in each one of those.
Right, so let's start with the vantage point of just one person, a singular gamer. I would imagine if you're into the hobby a lot, you have your tastes kind of lined up already. I would say coming across games you don't like probably doesn't happen too often, because you can kind of look at a game or read about a game and go, yeah or no, that's for me, or it isn't.
I would imagine, although speaking from the seat of a person, a singular gamer, there's definitely been a lot of times where I thought that I was going to like something, and I read about it, I watched the videos, maybe I even, looked at the rules a little bit, and I got it to the table and it just wasn't for me, and I was sure that it was going to be. So you do get surprised sometimes.
But it's easy then to be like, yeah, that's not for me. And you, as a board gamer by yourself, can easily make the decision to be like, yeah, I'm not going to play that anymore.
Yes. I think the one factor that probably factors in for people in that case, well, there's two. Like if you're, like in our case, we're a married couple, right? So if you really like something and I don't like it, I'm more inclined to give it more of a shot. And I think vice versa, because we're always the people that we play with, right? But then on the other hand, it's the money. You think like, I spent all this money on this game because I was sure I was going to like it, because it was in the top 100, because people that I trust recommended it, and I didn't like it. And now I feel like I'm just throwing that money away, because even if I go out and I resell it, I'm not getting back what I spent. So you almost feel like this own pressure from yourself to try to get your money's worth out of it. Like maybe if I just play it a couple more times, maybe it'll click and then I'll like it and then I'll want to keep it.
That's a really good point. I never thought about the money aspect, but how could you not? These games are getting so goddamn expensive. Yeah, as a singular gamer, I'd imagine that would be the biggest obstacle into maybe trying to convince yourself you like something. The biggest roadblock between you going, get this thing out of here. And no, I need to check this out a little more.
I think that's definitely the biggest thing for me is if I was playing something like at someone else's house or at a board game cafe, then it's really easy after one play to be like, you know what? I don't think that's for me. I don't want to play that one again. There's so many games in the world that I haven't tried. I don't need to put more time into that one. And sometimes you don't know when you're not sure and you're like, okay, maybe I give it another play or two. But if you've already spent the money, I think I personally am a lot more inclined to be like, you know what? Let me just see. Maybe that was just a bad first run. Maybe I misinterpreted the rules or I wasn't doing it right or something. And maybe I'll enjoy it the second or third time.
I think every game deserves at least 2 plays, maybe even 3, before you really get a grasp on whether you like it or not, especially just from your own perspective as your own personal board gaming adventure. I would also qualify the husband-wife duo or the people who play with their families, young kids or whatever. I would actually put that in the singular board game category. I wouldn't bump that up to game group just yet. So maybe there's a little consideration to what other members in your family might like. But I would imagine as a family, you typically have the same taste because you guys are kind of growing together in what board games you take on.
I would think that. And I mean, that's kind of true in our household. There's definitely a couple of games that are like favorites of yours that I don't particularly enjoy, or favorites of mine that you don't particularly enjoy. And rarely we do bust them out, because we love each other and we want each other to have a nice time. But for the most part, like, I'm not inclined to bring up a game that I know you don't like, even if I love it. And you're the same. So we tend to gravitate towards the ones that we both enjoy.
All right, so let's take this individual now and put them in a gaming group. And admittingly, I don't know how much we'll have to say on this particular topic because you and I are not part of a gaming group. We don't understand or know that dynamic very well. However, I would imagine that in a gaming group, the odds of seeing things hit the table that you don't enjoy go up, I would say a little more than somewhat, because you're dealing with a lot of different personalities and a lot of different tastes, and different people want to play different things. The dynamic of a game group, to me, seems to lend itself more towards a lot of compromise, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, and I think it depends a lot on what the purpose of your game group is, but we've dabbled a little bit with game groups, nothing that we've stuck with for a long period, but I feel like a lot of the time it's, I really want to try this game at 4 or 5 players, or this game doesn't really get its full, you don't get everything out of it with just me and my husband, so I want to get a group together. So a lot of it is, I think, you're quid pro quoing, like, we're going to play this game that you want to play, you're going to play this game that we want to play, so that we all get to experience what it's like at its best capacity.
And I think every group is going to be different. You typically will always have a group dynamic where one person kind of becomes the strong personality, whereas everybody else plays more of a passive role. In that scenario, I would say the odds of popular games that you don't like go up tremendously, because everybody wants to play the popular game, right? Everybody wants to check it out, see what all the buzz is about. And if you're sitting there and everybody around you said, man, that was awesome, and you didn't like it, or maybe there was something about it that you're like, I don't know, man, but everybody else said it was great, do you think you'd be more inclined to just play it again the next time without going, hey, I didn't care for this?
Absolutely. And I think there's all kinds of studies to show this, and I think everybody knows just personally, when you're around a bunch of other people that are all saying the same thing, it does feel uncomfortable to dissent. I think, though, it does depend a little bit on how much you get what you want out of the game group, right? Because at a certain point, if all they're doing is playing games that you don't like, maybe you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and play that one. But I would think at a certain point, you'd be like, you know what, maybe this is just not the group for me. Or if you know that that's the game they're going to play, like, okay, let's do this one again next week. You just be like, oh, sorry, I can't that day. I'm busy, But week after that, why don't we play this other game and I'm there for that one?
Right. Earlier, you mentioned the experience at the table, like not being able to determine whether a game is good or bad if everybody had a miserable experience, or maybe thinking more of the game if everybody had a great experience. And I think that is a part of board gaming that can get overlooked by some people, who enjoy playing games like as a exercise more than they enjoy playing a particular game. I think there is a difference between the act of playing games and playing games with people. That said, if everybody has a good time and you didn't, might the experience of everybody having a good time lend itself to you liking the game better than you would had you have examined it by yourself, and it then becomes tolerable?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, again, that really depends on why you're playing the game. Like, are you playing the game because you like to solve the puzzle? Are you playing the game because you like the social aspect of playing with other people? Because if you're there for the social aspect, then I think you're going to be much more influenced by the other people at the table. Not just because you want to like what they like, but because you're there to have a good time and they're having a good time. And it's kind of hard to not have a good time when the people that you're with and the people that you care about are having a good time. Even if there's parts of it that you're like, oh, I don't love this, that happiness is contagious.
It is, but I would say trying to replicate those moments, maybe at a different table, maybe you pick up a copy of the game, just to have it, or hey, maybe I'll like it better if I check it out more on my own. And then you find you don't like it because those moments are missing. Then it just becomes another game you might have wasted your money on. And then you rely on those social moments a little to make those popular games more worthwhile. But I think if you have that, it is worth holding on to. And it makes a popular game maybe you didn't like a little more enjoyable because you like the people you were around. From this vantage point, it seems that there is a lot more pressure to like games everyone else does, but also there's a lot more opportunity to appreciate a game for a different reason, even if you didn't like the gameplay.
Yeah, and I think that the other kind of great thing about playing with a game group is if you didn't like it as much, but you enjoy the experience, you don't have to buy it, right? Like, it can be something that you don't have on your personal shelf at home, but when you're showing up to that game night, you're okay if that's what comes to the table because you're enjoying that experience together.
Awesome. Now let's talk about a whole different kind of pressure now when we move that person from the game group to the role of content creator. In the board gaming content creation space, I don't know how competitive it is, but I do know that the space is very saturated. You've had people in the game for well over 2 decades now who are just the people in that particular space. You have a lot of people who have their small little channels with their little followings, and then you have people like us who might literally just be screaming into the ether with nobody listening. But everybody starts a channel because they want eyes and ears on them to some degree. You can say you do it for the love of board games, and you probably do, but let's be real. You put it out there, you want eyes and ears. So you as a content creator come across a game that has a lot of buzz. You've already seen everybody else talk about it. Everybody else is liking it. It was a big hit at the game convention you went to. You're about to produce a piece of content. How much pressure is there to say you like it the way everybody else does, knowing that you're trying to get eyes and ears, but also you're trying to get game designers and game publishers to want to give you more of their games?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, is that you want, as a content creator, you want people to want you to make content about their games. And if you're going to do that, you can't be out there trashing every game that you play, especially the popular ones, especially the big names that everyone is hyping up. You also don't want to get that reputation of just being like a contrarian just for the sake of it. That's definitely not going to give you more eyes and ears.
Well, it actually might, but you're right, maybe in the wrong way. So you might get that big explosion of views and clicks initially, but after shitting all over, I would say probably 2 or 3 games, I would say your access to said games before everyone else gets them dries up pretty quick.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess maybe somebody, especially in today's kind of climate, might be entertained by your negativity, but nobody's going to trust your opinion because they're just going to see you as the person who just doesn't like things.
Yeah, it's a weird pressure, and it's a pressure that, admittingly, we don't feel too much, not just because of the fact that we have 10 people listening at this point, but also we're not looking for the newest, latest, and greatest games. In our old show, we did have some connections to people who gave us their games early. Not liking one, we never came across that. I have heard that content creators, though, will tell people in private, like, hey, I didn't enjoy your game. Maybe I'm not the person to make this for you.
Yeah, and I think that you almost have to do that. And maybe not necessarily, maybe especially if you're like a really big name, you have a responsibility to give your honest feedback. People want to know what you think. If you don't do an episode about something that's popular, people might ask questions and wonder why. And they might infer. So
Yeah, the internet's very good at inferring.
right. But I think, especially for a small outfit like we are, and you are kind of in between, I think that it's completely reasonable to be like, look, I know you gave me this game because you want content out there, but I don't think it's going to do you a service for me to make that content because it just didn't connect for me. So I'm just going to give you back your game, and maybe you can find someone else who can do it justice.
But like you said, people might start to wonder. And so the pressure then again comes from, I would say, both the idea of like, I want people to send me games, and then also your viewers going, hey, why didn't you talk about that? That seems like a lot of weird pressure. And I think the more pressure there is, the more you might be influenced, like it or not, to say you like a popular game simply because it's a popular game.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a factor. And there's also, like, if you don't have a lot of listeners, but everybody's talking about this game, there's that inclination of like, okay, well, if I do an episode about this game, it might get me clicks where I wasn't getting them before. This might bring new viewers to my channel because they're looking for content about this game. And so I got to put content out there about this game. And obviously you want it to be agreeable content because you don't want to isolate or alienate the very first people, like, or these people that you're inviting to see your channel for the first time,
Yeah, and like you said, if you come off as contrarian for the sake of it, some people might find it funny, but most people are going to doubt you, and most people are going to call you out, and it's going to be a bigger thing than you thought it would be. So now that we've looked at this from 3 different vantage points within the game playing world, I want to ask, for each of these vantage points, how important might it be, despite all that pressure, to admit you don't like something, even though it's popular? And I think this is something people don't talk about because maybe it comes off as too negative, but might it be important to do it more in all of these spaces from these different vantage points? So let's start with the individual gamer themselves. For the sake of saving money, I would say yes, be very real about the games you don't enjoy for your own collection, because why have your shelf filled up with games you know you're never going to play? Why waste your hard-earned money on these games that cost, God, they cost so much now? I would say that person definitely should be honest with themselves 100% of the time, if not close to. Maybe their wife enjoys something and, okay, we'll play that. But for the most part, I would say be completely honest about what you don't like.
Yeah, and I think actually it's going to sound really silly to say this, but saying it out loud is important because it helps you realize and not make the same mistake again. And obviously every game, like, you can only learn so much by reading about it, by looking at the Kickstarter page or whatever. Like, you really don't know until you get it to the table. But the more that you speak out loud about what you like or don't like, the easier it's going to be for you to discern without necessarily getting it to the table, whether it's going to be something that you enjoy or not.
And I think you do have to do that too. You have to say it out loud. You have to get to know your tastes, because if you look at these Kickstarters now, and look, I'll be the first to admit, I sometimes want to bite on these things too. Games look very flashy now. The components are great. The color schemes are wonderful. The table presence is just fantastic. And when you see that, you're automatically attracted to it. And you think, oh man, I got to get down and play that. But then you kind of read the rule book or you read how it plays and you go, ooh, there's some mechanics in there I know I'm not going to enjoy. So despite the look of the game, which I think a lot of people bite on, you got to know yourself a little better, and you have to just admit, like, yeah, everybody seems to like it. I'm going to assume that they bought into the look of it or whatever. I'm going to pass.
Another thing for us especially is the theme will really get us. We'll get totally pulled in by a theme.
Yeah,
that
we're big on
excites
theme.
us. And we've been burned so many times by that, where the theme is just, we just want to love it because it's, it's cowboys or it's outer space or it's pirates, whatever the theme is that excites us. We get the game to the table and it's just the mechanics are not there for us. And I think we've only recently started to really look past the theme when we're looking at games and being like, okay, well, wait a minute. What's really happening in this game? Like, what are you actually doing? And is that something we're going to enjoy?
Right. I would say the pressure, to be honest, here is pretty minimal. Now let's move on to the person who's part of a game group. Everyone likes the game. Everyone's talking about it. It's a hit, but it's not for you. Do you have a responsibility, not just for yourself, but just to make the game group a more agreeable place to be for everyone to sit there and be like, guys, I didn't like that. I don't want to play it.
I think it depends. I think that if you are going to not enjoy it so much that it takes away from the enjoyment of others, then you should be upfront about it and just be like, you know what, maybe I'm going to sit this one out. Or I would really prefer if we play a different game while I'm here. And maybe, you know, next time you guys can play this one when I'm not around or whatever. But I also think that there's more of a pressure to not be that guy who makes it a terrible experience for everyone. If that's really what everyone else wants to do, to kind of make yourself enjoy it more.
Yeah, this is a tough one because if everybody likes it and you don't, and they want to keep playing it, I mean, yeah, to me, it just seems like a no-brainer. Just sit that one out. But that could be the only chance you get to play board games. I mean, that's kind of why people are part of gaming groups, right? They can't do it at home or whatever the case may be. I would imagine if you were a part of an established group, people would have no problem going, okay, you're not a fan of that one. How about we rotate things out? Like, there's a lot of room here for compromise. And so I think as long as you don't, you know, shit on the gamers themselves, but rather go, hey man, this is why I didn't like this game, whatever. I think, you know, you're probably amongst friends, compromise. Maybe we'll rotate that out for a while, or maybe you sit this one out, or maybe we'll play something you like and we don't, whatever. I think there's more room for compromise there, and I think that's probably a good thing, but you can't get to that compromise unless you speak up.
Well, and I think you have to give it a fair shake before you say that, right? You have to establish yourself as somebody who's willing to give it a try. Otherwise, everybody is just going to be like, oh, well, you're just negative. You're just pooping on everything everybody wants. We don't really want you to be part of this group anymore. But if you're willing to give it a fair shot and you're willing to then be honest about, look, I really tried. I wanted to like it. It just wasn't for me. But I do like this other one that we played, you know, that you guys also liked. Maybe we could lean more into that one. Then I think people are more willing to be flexible with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for compromise here. And compromise is always a good thing when you're dealing in a group setting. Now let's move on to the content creator. I think I have the most to say about this one. The idea of giving a game back and going, hey, I don't know if I should make content about this. I get why people do it. I don't know if a content creator should. I think if there's something about the game they didn't like, especially if people are relying on their opinions, which I don't think people should do, but they do. So, okay, there you go. You got to be honest about what you didn't enjoy about the game. And most people do a pretty good job. In my experience, though, I've noticed that somebody will be like, well, I didn't like this or that, but hey, you know, overall, it's all right, and you might like it. Like, if it's bad, despite how popular it might be or whose name's attached to it, I think if you're going to put out an opinion for people to listen to, that opinion needs to be honest.
But I think the key word is that it's an opinion, right? And I think that's really where it kind of depends. Like, if it's just a badly made game, maybe you don't want to make the content.
I think you should say something, though, because people are going to spend a lot of money on these games. And if it's all flash, if it's all style, no substance, because the one thing that most content creators do not talk about, I've noticed, is the price of a game. Watch any given review, and almost none of them will talk about the price, or they will glaze over it or assume everybody has that type of money to drop on a game.
Oh, that's a really good point. And actually, you know what? Maybe if it's just a bad game, well, I mean, I think where my hesitation is like, who am I to say what's a bad game? So I think if you are honest with the caveat of like, look, this is my experience. You're welcome to try it and make your own decision, come up with your own opinion. But from my experience, it didn't work. The rules didn't make sense, or it seemed to be broken in this way. It was very easy for one person to get a huge advantage. It's imbalanced, whatever. Or there's just, it wasn't for me, right? If you're into this kind of mechanic, this might be the game for you. It's just not the mechanic that I like. And I think being very clear about that distinction, whether it's like the game doesn't seem to work or it's just not something you like. I think that's going to go a long way in getting people to trust you and trust your opinion.
Yeah, it does come down to trust and being thorough in your assessment of a game. I don't think there's any benefit to anybody, especially if they're looking to your opinion before they kickstart something for $250, some of these games. I don't think it does them justice to be like, well, they said it might be for me, so yeah, let me give it a shot. Or what's worse, because they liked it so much, or they're pretending to like it. I'm not accusing anyone of pretending, but if they were and they go, yeah, definitely check this one out, that could be somebody's whole gaming budget for like 6 months.
You really have to be considerate of the responsibility that you have. I mean, not for us, nobody really listens to our show, but like for the big names where people have a lot of audience and they have a lot of sway, and you know that people are looking to you to get your opinion because they trust it, they see you as an expert. I think you have to really be honest, and I think you have to be thoughtful in how you talk about it too. Not just it's good, it's bad, it sucks, it's awesome. You have to be very specific, because I think the more specific you are, the more clear you are, the more someone is going to be able to actually figure out if this is a game for them or not.
So I think we can start landing the plane here. There are different pressures all over to maybe enjoy games that everyone else likes, even though you might not. I personally have no problem saying I don't like something, even if it just has to do with the fact that I'm not good at it. I mean, we did it here today on the list. I didn't like certain games just because I don't understand the mechanics. No problem saying that. But I can also take myself out of it and be like, it's a well-made game, like I did with Gloomhaven. Like Gloomhaven, I would never sit and play. I don't like it, but I also see the value that people find in it. So as long as you can be honest about your assessments from, I would say all those levels, I think you're going to be fine. But you have to be honest, and I think it's important to be honest. And when it comes to your own time, whether you're a content creator or part of a game group, don't waste too much of it.
I agree. And I think everyone really could benefit from all of us being honest with ourselves and with each other. I think across the board, we would all have a better gaming experience if we were just more honest and not buying into the hype necessarily, and really just being thoughtful. Let's be real. Just because a game is popular doesn't necessarily mean that it's good, but also, just because you don't like something doesn't mean it isn't good. It might just not be for you. And I think it's important to distinguish those things and be thoughtful and honest about them. So that just about wraps it up. We'd love to hear your take on this. What are your thoughts on popular games? What are some popular games maybe you don't like? Or what do you think about the games that we said we didn't like? Maybe you think we're full of shit? Comment wherever you're listening. We'd love to keep the conversation going.
Jessica, never leave me to do one of these episodes by myself again.
I won't.
Never. I will find you wherever you are. This is always better with two people. You don't want to just be like talking into a mic. It feels weird, and it probably comes across as weird.
Well, yeah, especially with this topic. You just sound like you're yelling into the grandmother's basement.
Old man shaking his fist at all those damn games that suck. Next time, we are going to talk about a game that doesn't suck. Kind of gave away the ending a little bit, but we'll be flying the friendly skies with Pan Am, and we will be doing another brand new segment. It is all very, very exciting, and I can't wait for it. Jessica, you will be there for that, right?
Absolutely.
You're going to be there for that.
Wouldn't miss it.
You better not. Better not. Anyway, this has been Back to the Table Podcast. I'm Bryce. That's Jess. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Bye-bye.